Again, we're just waiting for this jury to be brought in. They're examining this witness about the statements that he made to IA, Internal Affairs, about this shooting and whether or not it will overlap with testimony that he actually gives in the case. So as soon as something happens, we'll make sure to jump back in. But in the meantime, I want to analyze the meat of this case. So joining me right now, I'm so happy to have him, is criminal defense attorney Saman Nasseri. Saman, great to have you back here on Law and Crime.
Thanks for having me.
This case is a difficult one for the defense. I mean, if you at the beginning of the day, they didn't even provide an opening statement. And when the victim's mother was on the stand, all they said is, Miss, we just want to extend you our condolences and our sympathies, and that's it. What do you think their strategy is?
I think the strategy here is to wait, because again, as a defense attorney, you don't have to give an opening statement right away. You can wait until it's your turn to present your case. And you can give your opening statement when it's the defense's turn to present a case. And a lot of attorneys use that strategy. Sometimes it is the best strategy to use because you can hear what the prosecutor's case is going to be first and then build your opening and your case off of theirs. So there is some strategy there to not necessarily giving an opening. There is some, obviously, this case has a lot of publicity. It's a horrible thing that happened to this child. And they might be waiting to see everything the prosecution lines up and then just pinpoint their defense after the point.
Okay, let me ask you this. If the defense says, listen, our client realistically believed that that car that was being driven, that had Jordan Edwards in it, realistically believed that it was backing up towards his partner, and he felt his partner was in danger, even though there was no evidence so far that we know of the car backing up, even though none of the people in that car had any weapons, even though there were gunshots heard that night that were from being fired at a rehab center nearby, but again had nothing to do with the defendant. Can they realistically mount a successful defense here?
Again, it's a matter of reasonable doubt in what they can prove. Now, what the defense also might be doing, too, is trying to put in a little bit of sympathy here as far as sentencing goes. They might in their head also know, because the evidence, I mean, the video came out, the video shows the car moving forward. So we've all seen that video. It's a matter of maybe doing some damage control and some mitigation to show, hey, yeah, this happened, it's terrible. Please don't punish this guy as much as possible, though, should it go to sentencing and he's found guilty. So, and that's the defense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I always love the strategy of these cases. That's one of the reasons we cover all these here on Law and Crime, to see what the prosecution and the defense will do. Saman, stand by. We're going to jump back into court, listen a little bit more to this witness, again, trying to see what his testimony will consist of. So let's go live. Okay, so that's a little bit of a choppy feed. We're going to work on that. So let's bring back in our very special guest to talk more about the details of this case, Saman Nasseri. Saman, I got to ask you, the chances that Officer Roy Oliver will take the stand, what do you think?
I think that depends on how the prosecution ends their case, and I think that depends on how the defense is feeling. I mean, obviously, you keep your defendant as a witness on the witness list, but you don't have to make the officer take this. You don't have to make your client take the stand, the defendant take the stand, and you know, this is still a police officer. He's going to be well-spoken. The problem with police officers taking a stand, and you know, jurors have said this before in other cases, is sometimes they come across as coached, they come across too well-versed, too well-polished, and that's a hard thing. That training, that stand training that officers have had of how to take the stand and testify, that's a hard thing to unlearn and unteach yourself. So if he takes the stand, he has to come across as a normal person, not an officer, and not look like he's been coached and polished and take that part out of it. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's hard being a witness no matter who you are, especially in this kind of case. We'll take a break ourselves, and when we come back, we're going to go talk more about the Roy Oliver case. Hopefully we'll be live, but remember, we're also carefully monitoring the Sheena Hubers case out of Kentucky, and we are in verdict watch in the Paul Manafort case. Got our own Colin Kombacher there. So we got a lot we're waiting for, a lot that we're doing here on Law and Crime. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So at it looks like we're seeing a demonstration here. They've set up for the jurors, the prosecutors have set up a demonstration of exactly where this shooting happened. It's a bit hard to hear because, of course, we have our mics on the witness stand and with the attorneys, so we're doing our best to try to understand what's happening. But, of course, this is critical testimony. I'm here with Saman Nasseri, a criminal defense attorney. Saman, you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Okay, let's talk about this witness here, because we haven't heard a whole lot of what he had to say, but he's pretty important because he was one of the responding officers.
Yeah, so what he's kind of going through a little timeline of what happened, and the big thing is what his testimony is going to do. And again, it's hard to get testimony out of an officer officers are a little reluctant to testify against another officer, but it seems like this officer is giving a pretty good timeline of what happened and doing a great job just giving the facts, and that's what we're looking for here.
Absolutely, because it's an officer testifying against maybe his friend, his former colleague. Definitely a difficult thing. We're very closely monitoring the courtroom right now. As soon as we're back from this short break, we're going to take you live back inside that Texas courtroom. Stay with us. Some really interesting stuff going on in this courtroom in Texas in this Roy Oliver trial. He's the police officer, former police officer facing murder charges for killing that 15-year-old boy, Jordan Edwards. I want to bring my guest on now, Saman Nasseri. He's standing by. Let's talk really briefly about this because I want to go back to live court. But obviously, they're discussing his body cam footage, right? Because this witness is critical.
Oh, it's huge. And body cam footage is, in my opinion, is one of the best things that happened over the last few years. But to have his body camera that's going to show everything, I mean, who cares what he says after that? If the body camera shows what happens and the car moving forward and never back.
And Saman, sorry to cut you off there. That's the officer. It looks like the witness on the stand, his colleague that was there that night, is talking again. I don't want to miss a moment of this. So let's go right back to the courtroom live. All right, you just were hearing some critical testimony in this Roy Oliver case, the murder case that we're following out of Texas. That's the police officer facing murder charges for killing a 15-year-old boy. A party in April of 2017. Cops were called. A lot of noise was going on there. And then Officer Oliver opens fire on this group of teenagers that are inside a vehicle. You just heard the other officer on this scene describe what happened. I want to bring in my guest now, Saman Nasseri. I got to tell you, I was trying to listen as closely as I could, Saman. What did he say about whether the vehicle was leaving or coming towards them? Because that's the contention. Officer Oliver claims the vehicle was coming towards them, and that's why he shot those shots. What did you hear? I couldn't hear it.
I heard close to what you heard, but it sounded like it was leaving, and then the part that I picked up was when he said, "I was not in fear for my life." Because that's part of Officer Oliver's contention, too, is he did it to save the other officer's life. So he specifically said, "I was not in fear of my life." That is, to me, that's huge.
And he also said, and I want to go back, I hope we can pull around this sound as quick as possible, but I believe that officer also said that the vehicle with the kids inside was driving away from them. They were trying to evade the police, not trying to drive at the police to harm the police, correct?
That is correct.
Wow. Wow. This is some big testimony. We're going to try to turn it around so we can listen to it again and really listen carefully, because jurors are going to be taking this guy's word for it. He's a police officer, right? Obviously, maybe Mr. Oliver, former officer Roy Oliver, will take the stand in this and give his version of what happened. But I guarantee you, and there he is, the defendant, former cop, I guarantee you what this guy just said, that witness, is very important in the jurors' eyes. All right, let's take a brief moment to pull that sound, and we're going to switch to some other big cases that we're following across the country, so take a listen to this.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. The youngest son of actor Jean-Claude Van Damme pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct in Phoenix after allegedly holding his roommate at knife point. 22-year-old Nicholas Van Varenberg was arrested last September on suspicion of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful imprisonment, as well as other charges for allegedly holding the unidentified roommate at knife point in their apartment. Van Varenberg is scheduled to be sentenced on October 3rd. The body of a Michigan teenager who went missing in 1979 was found in a grave in Georgia over 700 miles from his home. Andrew Jackson Greer was 15 years old at the time of his disappearance and was believed to be a runaway. Greer's body was identified thanks to a forensic analysis from the Center of Human Identification at the University of North Texas, who were able to confirm with DNA that a John Doe buried in Georgia was indeed Greer. Investigators now believe that just 2 days after running away, a semi-truck fatally hit Greer while he was hitchhiking in Georgia. Authorities in Iowa reportedly believe missing University of Iowa student Molly Tibbetts is still alive and her captor is hiding in plain sight. The 20-year-old student from Brooklyn, Iowa went missing on July 18th and was last seen going for a jog before her disappearance. A source in Iowa law enforcement alleges the FBI is getting closer to making an arrest of a suspect, though the FBI has not confirmed these claims. Investigators do not consider Tibbetts' boyfriend, Dalton Blake, a suspect and questioned the owner of a hog farm twice, but have yielded no results. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for Law & Crime.
Thanks so much, Anthony, for a recap of what's going on across the country. That Molly Tibbetts case we've been following very closely here on the network. Interesting, we're hearing an update that authorities believe Molly Tibbetts is still alive. Saman Nasseri is with me via Skype, criminal defense attorney. That's an interesting development in this case because police have been pretty closed down in terms of information. We haven't heard a lot. It's been quite a mystery. This young woman went jogging about a month ago, and she hasn't been seen since. The information I'm hearing sounds like they think this is an abduction.
Yeah, so, and then there's some belief that she might be alive and might be held hostage somewhere. The timeline shows that she went jogging. They've cleared the suspects or the people they thought were suspects. So it does sound like it could be an abduction, but there haven't been any strong leads since then. So it's kind of a difficult case to work with.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's one where we're certainly praying for this young woman, this Iowa student, college student, and we hope she's okay and that she's found safely. A lot of times these cases don't end well, and we're really hoping for the best. I want to turn now to another case that we're following. As I said, a lot going on the Law & Crime Trial Network. It's another trial that we're following out of Kentucky. Shayna Hubers, she's on trial for murder for allegedly killing it's really not a question of whether she shot him. The question is the motivation. There he is, the victim. She claims she shot him in self-defense. Prosecutors say that this was calculated. She's on trial right now. Unfortunately, you can see her there in court. We haven't been able to live stream this trial, but our reporter, Aaron Keller, is in the courtroom, and he's been feeding us in the witness sound. So we're also trying to turn that around as fast as possible. In the meantime, I think we should listen to this 911 call that was played for jurors, because it gives you a very good idea of her defense in this case. And listen to what she's saying and see for yourself whether you believe her. Take a listen. Okay, besides the police interview tape that we watched some portions of, I think that 911 call is going to be critical evidence for the jurors in this case that we're following out of Kentucky. My guest for the morning, Saman Nasseri, he's been standing by all afternoon and a little bit of the morning, and I want to thank him. I know he has to run into court. Saman, thanks so much for joining us. We'll definitely have you on next time.